Alright, welcome everybody. My name is David Kopschever. I'm a volunteer ranger here at Katmai National Park. We're going to be doing a play-by-play for the next hour or so. If you're not familiar with the play-by-play, I'll basically be narrating the bear action we see in front of our eyes. I'm standing here on the Brooks Falls platform along the Brooks River. Katmai is located on the Alaskan Peninsula. So right now we're looking at who I believe to be 747. Just a few moments ago there was another pretty large male bear at the falls. 747 showed up, and within 5 minutes or so that other pretty large bear decided to take off down the river. I don't know exactly who that other bear is. I actually saw him on our last play-by-play. He's got some pretty distinguishable features. He's got a small scar on his nose. He's also got ears that are blonde tipped oval and positioned kind of backwards. They're kind of tucked back on his head. He's also got a triangular scar on his left shoulder, which shows even through his thick winter coat. Again, that's the bear that just took off. The bear we're looking at now is likely 747. Just an absolutely huge male brown bear. Probably the largest bear we have frequently using the Brooks River. So again, if you're not familiar with the play-by-plays, I'll just be narrating what we see in front of us. If I stop talking for any short amount of time, don't worry, that doesn't mean we've necessarily lost connection. We're just kind of enjoying the view in front of us. So it's August, and you know, generally we can't predictably see bears at the falls at this point in the season. August is a month where most of the sockeye salmon have generally moved on through the Brooks River and gone into some small tributaries going into Brooks Lake. We actually just saw a red sockeye salmon jump the falls, so we'll kind of see if we can catch any more of that as I talk. So most of the salmon in August have already moved through the river and are in their final spawning locations, some small tributary creeks that go into Lake Brooks. This year there's been kind of an extended salmon run. It's just lasted a bit longer than usual, and because of that we've been seeing more bears at the falls. We're also seeing quite a few silver salmon in the river, which is normal at this time. So a lot of the fish you see jumping are going to be silver salmon. Also, a lot of the fish we see the bears eating are going to be silver salmon. You can tell the two salmon species apart in a number of ways. Silver salmon don't turn that bright red color. They'll stay fairly silver. They might turn a little maroon or purple, but they stay fairly silver even after they're in their kind of spawned out stage. And of course the sockeye salmon are those bright red colored fish. Let's see if we can see them in the water here. So again, we're still seeing some sockeye salmon. For the most part, the run is finished. The run is just about through. It's normal to see some sockeye in the river at this time, but the high numbers that we saw earlier in the month, that was a little bit abnormal. So the bear we're looking at now, 747. Again, one of the largest bears along the river. He's in his mid-teens, around 15 years old or so. And he's become increasingly dominant as the seasons go by. The only bear he really will yield to consistently is 856. So there's a pretty Pretty well-established hierarchy among the brown bears here at the falls. Large, aggressive male bears will rank among the top. Being so large, 747 is, you know, he's probably the number 2 bear. So this is now the 3rd fish I've seen 747 catch just in the last 15 minutes or so. And that one's actually a pink salmon that he's eating now. We have all 5 species of salmon swim through the Brooks River, but the vast majority are sockeyes. And at this time of year, the number 2 most abundant would be silver salmon. Pink's coming in 3rd. Very few chum salmon, but I have seen a few. King salmon will run a little bit earlier in the season, even before the sockeye get here generally. And again, much fewer king salmon than sockeye or silver. All salmon, though, they feed more than just the bears. We'll see 747, he may not eat the entire fish here. When we see the bears eat just the skin, the eggs, and the brain, those really fatty parts of the fish, he's not being wasteful, he's just practicing good energy economics. If you can afford to eat just the best parts, just the most fatty parts of the fish, it makes more sense to fill your belly up with almost pure fat than with muscle and flesh. We've now got another bear heading up the river. And at first glance, this appears to be 32, but we'll wait and see if we can get some better looks at him. So I was starting to say a moment ago, there's a pretty well-established hierarchy among the bears here. 747 is going to rank just about at the top. And so what that means is when this other bear comes along, it's very unlikely that this other bear is going to push 747 out of his preferred fishing spot. In the bear world, the bigger you are, the better. The more access you have to your preferred fishing spots, the more you're going to have other bears just get out of your way, and the more you're going to have access to females. So what we're seeing here is this new bear is giving 747 quite a bit of space, really giving him a wide berth as he approaches. Bears are solitary animals. They're not social. They don't like to be in the same area if they don't have to. But they're also very opportunistic. If they see or if they learn about a reliable food source, they'll come back year after year and capitalize on it, regardless of whether or not there's other bears around. And of course, all bears are different. You know, some are less tolerant to other bears than others. Some are very tolerant of other bears. So I've just gotten kind of confirmation that this new bear that showed up is very likely to be 32, nicknamed Chunk. Some of his distinguishing features: he's got really pointy ears, almost kind of like elf ears. He's also got slightly longer hair on his rump, at least right now he does, than the rest of his body. And that might change as the season goes on, as his new winter coat grows in and becomes more even. Right now he's also got a bit of a gash on his rear end, which is probably the result of a fight with another bear. This is also one of 32's preferred fishing spots. He can fish in different areas of the falls. I've seen him move around a good deal, but if that spot, that far pool is open, there's a good chance he'll come in and make use of it. He's also got some more small scarring near his left rear leg. 2 small scars there. So what we're watching, of course, we're watching these bears fish for salmon. And there's a number of different ways that bears will do that. Right now, these two are utilizing the stand and wait method. They're in that far pool, and that's really not an area that salmon can successfully jump the falls very often. The water's really shallow, so if there are salmon over there, what they're doing is they're kind of feeling out the falls. They're looking for a place where they can successfully make that jump. Since the water's so shallow, they'll go up to the base of the falls, figure out that they can't make it, and they'll start getting washed back down the river. And when that happens, these bears will pounce on those fish, pin them to the ground, and get a pretty good, easy meal. Some other fishing techniques. Similar one would be the sit and wait. Basically the same thing. Sitting in the water, waiting for a fish to bump up against you. You might pin it against your chest, pin it against the ground. It looks like 32 just caught a fish now. So the sit and wait fishing technique, very similar. A lot of time that'll be done in the jacuzzi, which is this area right here where we just saw that fish jump out of. And that's really the only place that the fish are able to frequently make successful jumps over the falls. You might see a successful jump elsewhere from time to time, but generally speaking, that's the spot where the fish are going to make it up the falls. And so a big dominant bear will come into that spot, take a seat, and wait for fish to bump up into him. That water there, really turbid. It's really fast moving. It's deeper there, so when the water goes over the falls, It plunges down and then it rises back up in kind of a circular motion. And the fish can use that upward momentum to get a little boost over the falls. But it'll also kind of disorient them at times. And the bears will use that to their advantage. Another fishing technique, one that you might see in a lot of pictures of Katmai, of the Brooks Falls, is the stand and wait up on top, doing some lip fishing, fishing on the lip of the falls. And the bear will stand there and wait for a fish to jump, and hopefully it'll jump just right into its mouth, basically. It might pin it onto the gravel up top. But regardless of which fishing technique you use, and there's several others, they all require a lot of patience. Now, not unlike when you're fishing as a human being. So not only does it require patience, but fishing for bears, you know, it also requires skill, the ability to learn. The bears aren't born with an innate ability to catch salmon. They might try different things, figure out what's successful for them. They'll certainly learn from their mother as they watch her fish, and they'll also learn from other bears. One particular bear that showed up to the falls in July for the first time last year was 775, nicknamed Lefty, and he had been to the river in the fall months before, September, October, but he had never been here in the summer when the fish are actually jumping up the falls. So he showed up for the first time last year, and you could see he was really inexperienced with fishing. He didn't quite know how to do it successfully. He'd dash around and jump in the water. He'd try to steal fish from other bears, which can be successful, but if you do it to the wrong bear, it might not work out too well for you. He even jumped off the lip of the falls at one point and belly flopped into the water trying to catch fish. Not successfully, I might add. But as he continued to try, and as he got a little more patient, he watched other bears, found out what was successful. He became a successful lip fishing bear. So this year we saw him up on the top of the falls quite a bit, successfully catching fish there. And now it looks like 32's caught another. I've never seen either of these bears steal fish from other bears. But that can be a pretty successful tactic. I mean, you don't have to expend a whole lot of energy standing in the water, fighting the current. You let the other bear do all the work and you go take the fish right from him or her. Bears don't have any moral code, any code of ethics. It's all about survival. Every bear is on his own, on her own, and they're just doing what they can to survive. It's difficult to prescribe human characteristics to bears. Sometimes we want to, it's tempting to. The wild animals are, you know, really in a league of their own. They don't have the same concepts that we do, and they shouldn't. I'm gonna take a quick break from the bears and show you some merganser ducks. Looks like they just caught a small minnow or fry, some small fish. So if you see these little guys swimming around, kind of motoring through the water, those are merganser ducks. Pretty common here on the Brooks River. Looks like 32's gotten another. Looks like another silver. I've seen quite a few bears bring their catch over to this little area. The current's not as strong there. If there's not a ton of other bears around, it makes a lot of sense to bring your fish out of the rapids so you just have a little easier time eating it, and you don't really have to worry quite as much about another bear coming along and stealing your fishing spot. So I just took a quick look on the comments on Discuss, and it looks like a couple people have seen 32 stealing fish before. I personally haven't, but I'm not here all the time. We actually call stealing fish pirating. One bear that I have seen pirate quite a few fish is 634 Popeye. And that may just be because he happened to do it a few times while I was around, or he may utilize that technique a little more than some other bears. You get a really good sense of the just immense power that these animals have in a lot of different ways, but watching them eat the fish, I think, is a particularly good way, particularly impressive way that they showcase their power. Ripping off the skin of a salmon might not sound like it's that hard, but it would be extremely difficult for you or I to do that, and they just, you know, it's no effort at all in doing that. So it looks like 32 did a good bit of high grading there. Just ate the skin, maybe took a bite out of the brain. And again, those leftovers that he's leaving, those are going to go on to feed birds like gulls, kingfishers, bald eagles. Some of it might wash up onto the shore and give nutrients to trees and plants. Other small mammals might be able to capitalize. Insects. So really nothing gets wasted out here. And even, you could even go farther to say that the bears help to distribute those calories, help to distribute those nutrients throughout the ecosystem. So I'm about halfway through, so I'll just reintroduce myself. My name's David. I'm a volunteer ranger at Katmai. We're at the Brooks Falls watching 2 adult male brown bears catching sockeye salmon. If you're not familiar with the play-by-play setup, I won't be answering any specific questions in the chat today. We'll save those for the live chats or text chats. I'll just be narrating the bear activity we see. I'll pop into the chat every now and then and just see if there's anything burning that I can address. But of course, as I operate the camera and try to narrate what we're seeing, it's a little difficult to multitask too much. And if you're just joining us, we've got 747 closer to the camera and 32 chunk towards the back wall there in what a lot of people call Otis's office. So these bears, a lot of what they're using is feel to catch the fish. They'll feel the fish bump up into them, but they're also using their eyesight. Bears have about equal eyesight to humans. From what we understand, from what I've read, they see the same colors as us. They're not nearsighted like people have hypothesized in the past. They see just about as well as us, and they see better than us in the dark. By measuring the rods and cones in the eye, you can tell how well an animal can see at night. And bears can see pretty darn well at night. And that allows them to continue fishing all through the night if they want to. And we've seen 32 kind of dunk his face in the water a few times. What he's doing there, it's kind of like a form of snorkeling. A lot of times we'll see bears in the lower river, and especially in September we'll see this a lot. We'll see them swimming around with their eyes under the water, ears out of the water. They really don't like to get their ears wet if they can avoid it. And they're looking for dead and dying fish. The 32 there, he's looking for fish swimming around. Maybe they're a little disoriented from all the fast-moving water, or maybe they're not able to move around quite as fast because it's so shallow there. So he's just trying to locate them with his eyes and then go ahead and pounce on them. So you might be wondering, you know, you've heard of Brooks Falls and how there's so many bears here, but we are only seeing 2, which for me it seems a little funny to say we're only seeing 2 bears. I think it's pretty cool that we're seeing 2 bears, but in August, a lot of times the bears will just follow the salmon all the way out to their spawning grounds, which are in some small tributary creeks that flow into Lake Brooks. They'll also go out and eat berries during this time. Blueberries are in full swing. It's a really big year for blueberries. They're particularly abundant up on Dumpling Mountain, so a lot of bears might be up there. They could just be in other creeks and streams where salmon also run. So that's where a lot of bears might be in August. In September, after the fish have spawned, they'll start to die, and as they die, they'll float back down into the Brooks River and flow out towards Neck Neck Lake. The river itself is about 1.5 miles long. And so up and down that 1.5 mile long river, and particularly down at the mouth, down near Neck Neck Lake, where it runs into Neck Neck Lake, the bears will hang out and capitalize on these dead and dying sockeye salmon. So that'll be in September. So if you've tuned in periodically throughout August and you haven't seen a ton of bears, check back in during September, October. You're likely to see a lot more bears down on the lower river cam. So, you know, if you're wondering, where are those bears that I'm so used to seeing? That's where they might be. It's not that they've died necessarily. It's not that they're gone forever. They're just probably out capitalizing on other food sources. The bears are extremely opportunistic, and they learn really, really fast. They only need really one event where they get food from a place for them to remember year after year that that's the place where I want to be at that time of the year. They're incredibly intelligent animals. And it looks like another silver salmon for 747. Silver salmon are quite a bit bigger than sockeyes. They're not quite as numerous. The run isn't as large in the Brooks River. But a silver salmon can be, on average, about 10 pounds, whereas a sockeye will come in around 5 pounds on average. I'd be interested to know the calorie count of an average silver salmon, but a sockeye, you can get about 4,500 calories out of a sockeye salmon. That's about the equivalent to 9 cheeseburgers. I say that a lot, but I think it's a really awesome analogy for how much food they're getting out of one salmon. .747 also, I've seen him eat his fish right in this spot. There's a few spots where he goes to eat his fish, and he always seems to have a similar sitting or laying down position. His legs kind of splay out behind him. He doesn't sit with curled up legs like other bears seem to. So kind of a distinctive posture that 747 has. So if you're watching us on Facebook Live or on another platform and you're not aware of the different things you can see on explore.org, I would highly recommend that you check out that website. Explore.org has webcams all over the world. I think they've got 5 cams in Katmai. We've got an underwater cam where you can check out salmon coming up the river. We've got this cam on the Brooks Falls area, 2 down on the lower river area. Those will be particularly exciting in September and October. There's also a beluga whale cam out on the Neck River. That's out in King Salmon, just outside of the park. And King Salmon is where the park headquarters are located, if you're wondering why we have a cam out there. I'm actually going to zoom out for a moment. What we're seeing a lot of right now, it's kind of surprising to me. We're seeing a lot of red sockeye salmon jumping the falls. I just saw about 3 try to make the jump. Generally, once the sockeye have turned colors, they're getting pretty close to their final stages of spawning, and generally that means that they're done migrating up the river. That means they're going to spawn somewhere in the Brooks River. We get about somewhere between 200 and 400,000 sockeye salmon swimming through just the Brooks River every year. And for those that are attempting to make it up the falls, about 8% of their jumps are going to be successful. That doesn't mean 8% of the fish themselves will be successful. They'll just keep on trying until they either make it or get picked up by a bear and eaten, or until they are just so exhausted that they can't go on anymore and they might die, or, you know, very few of them will end up spawning below the falls because they couldn't make it. Generally, they'll just keep on trying until they make it or die trying. But we do have a few, well, more than a few. We do have some sockeye salmon spawn below the falls as well. But it's interesting to see so many red salmon jumping. So I said between 200,000 and 400,000 in the Brooks River. In Bristol Bay, we get anywhere between 40 and 50 million salmon come through that region. It's one of the largest, possibly the largest sockeye salmon fishery in the world. And those are all wild sockeye salmon. They're not hatchery raised, not raised in a farm. Those are wild animals, and they're an absolutely vital part of this ecosystem. Things would look just altogether different if the sockeye salmon were eliminated, if the salmon runs in Bristol Bay were eliminated. And you know, it's one of the largest in the world, but we used to have very large salmon runs in a lot of places in the world. All along the Pacific coast, there used to be sockeye salmon that ran through a whole lot of those river systems, all the way out to Idaho, Montana. And now we have very, very few salmon that run through those same rivers. Part of the issue is the construction of dams. Some dams have fish ladders that fish are able to make it through, some do not. There's also historically a lot of overfishing that was done. But to give you an idea of how how incredibly fruitful the salmon run is. In Bristol Bay, we take humans, that is commercial fishing, takes about 30 million fish a year. And that's a sustainable number of fish to take. We can continue to have 40 to 50 million fish come back every year. They're just an incredible resource that, you know, it's vital, well, not only for the bears that we protect, but it's vital for everything. For our own lifestyles and for the entire ecosystem here in Alaska. So 747 with another salmon. And now we've got another bear showing up. This is the kind of a mystery bear right now. It's a female, it's a sow. She's got 2 yearling cubs. I don't see them at the moment, but if they're not treed somewhere, which I haven't actually seen her do myself, doesn't mean she hasn't treed her cubs, or that others haven't seen her do that. But so this is a bear that, as far as we know, does not have a number, has not used the falls, used the Brooks River area in the past. We could find later that she's a bear that's used it in previous years, and we just didn't recognize her. We weren't expecting her to show up. And so what she's doing there is kind of the dash and grab, what we call another fishing technique. The dash and grab. She'll look for fish in the water out in front of her and run and jump at them, try to pin them to the ground. And here are her 2 yearling cubs. One of them actually just tried to dash and grab himself. So again, not a bear that, as far as we know, has a number. Some cam viewers, some rangers, some visitors have, you know, come up with some kind of affectionate names for them already. The Salt and Pepper Twins, the Yin Yang Twins. You know, it's when you're watching wild animals, of course it's important to remember that they're wild and they're, you know, they're not our pets. But it's difficult to not want to come up with some kind of symbol to differentiate them. It's, you know, it's really difficult to think of, okay, well that's that bear, or, you know, that's the other bear. It just gets confusing. It's simply naming and numbering. They're all just symbols, and of course we have to be careful not to anthropomorphize wild animals. We have to remember that, you know, these are, not only are they wild, not only do they live according to their own rules, they're also potentially very dangerous animals. If we don't behave around them in certain ways, if we don't keep track of all our food items, if we don't stay in predictable areas, if we don't treat them with respect, they can be very dangerous. The other side of that is, if we do treat them with respect, we do give them distance, we do ensure that we don't give them any reason to come and investigate human objects or humans themselves, we can live together with these animals. So now this kind of mystery sow with no number, she is snorkeling. Again, looking for slow moving or a dead salmon on the bottom of the river. And here's her yearling cub. When this family showed up, it looks like he's gonna try the dash and grab a little bit himself. When this family showed up, they were really, really skinny. The mother had you could almost see her hip bones just popping out, really, really thin and almost frantic as they fished. They've since gained quite a bit of weight, all three of the bears. And they've also kind of calmed down a little bit. But like we just saw, this yearling cub trying to do some fishing of his own. Bears, they learn extremely quickly. So after just 1 year of being around, he's already fishing. Took me a lot longer than a year to learn how to fish. So very, very intelligent animals. Very dedicated to doing what they do best, surviving in this sometimes very harsh landscape. So we call these, well, we've been calling these two twins, not twins rather, these two cubs, Salt and Pepper or Yin Yang, because one's a little darker and one's a little lighter. That's the reason behind that nickname. But again, to have this many bears at the falls, a family group and two large males in August is fairly unusual. And we're seeing that because of how many salmon are still in the river. You know, bears are they're all individuals. They all have their own unique behaviors. And that, I think that even goes maybe especially so for sows with cubs. They all have different methods of surviving and raising their cubs. this bear in particular seems to be pretty bold in her behavior. She doesn't seem to mind coming up to the falls, even when there's, you know, the biggest male bear that we have on the river. That maybe wasn't so much the case in the beginning of the season. The first few times I saw her show up with her cubs, pretty skittish, pretty frantic. She would come in and do a quick dash into the water, try to catch a fish, maybe give it 2 or 3 tries and then take off. Didn't really seem very comfortable with other big male aggressive bears around. However, as time has gone on, she's become more tolerant of other bears. And it seems that she's become more successful in her fishing attempts. Haven't seen her catch one quite yet. But the weight that she's put on is pretty good evidence that she has been successful. She does seem, and her cubs seem, really pretty habituated to people. Especially people on the platform. Doesn't seem to mind getting right underneath the platform at times. So that indicates that she has former experience with humans. You know, and that in itself isn't a bad thing. It can present some challenges at times. Some bears will become so habituated to humans that they feel comfortable investigating human objects. But as long as we respond in an appropriate manner, as long as we behave in predictable ways and don't give bears any reason to investigate those human objects, there's no reason for them to continue to investigate those things. And there's also a certain amount of just understanding that you have to have if you're going to live in a place like this. Now, there might be an instance where a bear claws on a fence post or knocks down a sign. That's just part of being in bear country. So I'm going to focus in on these cubs as they're hanging out together. Because bears don't just investigate human objects, they investigate their surroundings regardless of where they are. That's an instinct of survival. The more you investigate the things around you, the more you're going to find new food sources. The more you're going to learn about your surroundings and determine what's safe, what's not safe, what's a waste of time, what might get you some food. So in that respect, bears are, again, incredibly intelligent, and they're very curious, which is, of course, part of intelligence. People who ask questions, they're usually pretty smart people. If you question the things around you, if you're curious about how things work, you wonder about things, that's a sign of intelligence. The same goes for bears. Well, it's hard not to get distracted by the sow and cubs, but as I had the camera focused over there and was talking about that family group, it looks like 747 just chased off 32. I didn't see exactly what had happened between the two. Maybe 32 got a little too comfortable, got a little too close to 747. And 747 decided to show his dominance, get a little aggressive, and chase off another bear that was competing for the same food resources that he's taking advantage of. If you're wondering, those birds that are right around 747, those are magpies. Also very intelligent birds. Also very playful birds. So 747 is kind of claimed the falls as his own spot now. And 32 is gonna smartly submit, avoid a physical confrontation, live to fish another day. You know, it may have been that the 747 simply wanted the fishing spot that 32 is in. And if a big dominant male bear is coming towards you, you're gonna move. You're gonna give him a lot of space. It did seem like 747 kind of chased off 32 though a bit. Really drive home the message that he is the most dominant bear. And that this area belongs to him. And, you know, bears like 747, they're not dominant because they're mean. They're not, you know, they're not jerks. But by pushing off other bears, by taking full advantage of certain fishing locations and certain resources, they're ensuring their survival. And beyond that, they're also ensuring that they're able to pass on their genes to another generation. Because that's, you know, that's really the main goal for all animals. We all want to create more of ourselves. We want to be successful as a species. And so being the biggest, the most dominant, that means you're going to pass on your genes, and that means you're going to pass on good genes because you're the biggest, you're the most dominant. Sometimes it seems like certain bears have grudges against one another. I've seen a number of times 747 chase off 32. I think he even had may have had a physical confrontation with 32 at one point throughout the summer. You know, I haven't really decided myself, my opinion, whether or not I think that bears actually have grudges against one another. It seems more like a human characteristic than something a bear would show. Of course, we can't ask the bears. I once heard a saying that I think applies to bears and applies to all wild animals. It goes, if a wolf could speak English, we wouldn't understand it. And I think that applies to bears just as much as it does to wolves. Even if we could speak their language, you know, they live and they think differently than us. I don't think we'd really get each other in a lot of different ways. And so still, 32 has not left the area. He's not quite ready to be done fishing. But he's also not ready to get too close to 747. That mystery sow, the salt and pepper, the yin yang twins, they've taken off as far as I can see. And so now we're seeing 32 kind of inch closer. Try to get back into position. I spoke a little bit about a minute ago whether bears have grudges against one another, and you know, I think that's maybe just the wrong word for it. I think some bears may be more threatened by others, by some than others, or they may be, may feel more comfortable exerting their dominance over others, more confident in doing so. And again, that could go back to that learned behavior. They've learned in the past that I can push this bear off. If I chase him, he'll run away and I'll get more fish. So 32 right now, he's showing some signs of submission, doing a lot of glancing over at 747, making sure he's not going to turn around and chase him off again. So the interaction we just saw between these two bears is really pretty typical. The bears do sometimes fight each other, they do sometimes get physical with one another. But more often, something like what we just saw will occur. One will chase the other off, or sometimes it won't even get to that. Sometimes they'll exhibit these behavioral displays. They'll show signs of aggression. They have different ways of communicating. One thing that a bear might do is what we call cowboy walking. It'll be a kind of an exaggerated swagger. And that is a sign of dominance. That's, if you see a bear, it looks a lot like a waddle. Kind of stick their back legs out a lot when they walk. It makes them look even bigger than they are. And what they're doing there is they're basically saying, I'm big, I'm bad, you should stay away from me. And a less dominant bear will do just that. He'll give him a wide berth, or he might just leave altogether. Other things that a bear might do when it's stressed out or when it's showing signs of aggression, what we call jaw popping, where it kind of clacks its teeth together, makes a popping noise. Growling, of course. Roaring at one another, those are pretty obvious signs of aggression or stress. And all those things, they're designed to avoid physical confrontations. If bears got into a physical fight every time that they needed to, settle a dispute over a fishing spot, or every time they had to settle a dispute over a female, or for any other reason, bears would not last very long. They're so powerful, they're so capable of just destroying one another that they've developed these signals to avoid actually getting into physical conflicts. And that being said, we do still see quite a few physical conflicts. We've got a real high density of bears here, a very healthy population. One of the highest densities of bears anywhere in the world. And because of that, physical fights are going to be a little more common than in some other places. Especially in late June, early July, when these bears are first coming together and seeing each other all again for the first time in a year, or the first time in 6 months, I should say, they kind of have to reestablish that social hierarchy. And they'll use a lot of those physical cues, the cowboy walking, the jaw popping, those kinds of things. But at a certain point, physical contact is made, and disputes are settled that way, and that really sets up that hierarchy, reestablishes it for the rest of the season. Those things will still occur from time to time as bears test their place in the hierarchy. So I'm a little over an hour in. I'm going to try to go for another 15 minutes or so, but for anyone who's watching this for the first time or just tuning in recently, my name's Dave. I'm a volunteer ranger at Katmai. We're doing a play-by-play where I'll just narrate the activity that we see going on. I won't be able to directly answer any comments, but if you're watching on Facebook Live or on another platform, I'd highly recommend checking out explore.org to to watch some of the different cams we have here in the park, and some of the cams all around the world. Explore as a webcam set up in a whole bunch of locations. You can see, you know, just a huge variety of wild animals. The bears being one of them. And you got polar bears, beluga whales, eagles, all kinds of cool stuff. And you've been watching this for the first time and you're wondering, why does he keep calling these bears different numbers and names? And since a lot of the bears rather come back to this same place year after year because of the huge abundance of salmon, we've been able to track their life histories, track some of their behaviors. And to help us do that, we've assigned numbers to each one of the bears. Helps us monitor them and learn from them. And in the process, some of them have received nicknames. And it looks like 32 just got another silver salmon. But if you're wanting to try to identify some of these bears yourself, look for different physical characteristics. Maybe the shape of the ears, different shed patterns, different behaviors even. Some bears only fish in certain places. Some of them have certain, preferred locations where they like to fish. And there's lots of different things you can look for. And a good guide for this is the Bear ID book. It's a free download. We update it every year with new bears that have shown up at the river. You can get that on the Katmai webpage. You just Google Katmai National Park ebook or Katmai National Park Bear ID book, and should be just the first link. You can also find that on the explore.org bear cam page. It'll be just below the video screen. It's a really great way to learn about some of the individual bears here, and also just learn about some of the Brooks River ecology, learn about how things work here. And if you've stopped in since after I mentioned this last, we're looking at 747 closest to us. One of the biggest bears on the river, probably the biggest bear that uses the river. And behind him we've got 32, nicknamed Chunk. These bears are fairly close to the same age, both in their mid-teens. I believe 32 is a bit younger than 747. But there's a pretty significant size difference. It's hard to estimate the weight of these animals, but my best guess would put 747 around 900 pounds. I might give an estimate of, 800 pounds, maybe 700 pounds for 32. Again, those are just estimates. I really have no way of knowing exactly how much these bears weigh, but seeing them in person, being able to compare them to other animals that you know the weight of, helps to give you an idea. And so once again, 747 just taking whatever fishing spot he wants because he's bigger, he's more dominant. And 32, the smaller of the two bears, is going to give him a wide berth, just avoid any trouble that might come of standing his ground. A big dominant bear a lot of times doesn't even pay any attention to other bears. They'll just focus on what they do best, fishing for sockeye salmon. And they'll get the reaction that they want out of the other less dominant bears. They'll move off, give them plenty of space. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. One more salmon for 747. We've probably seen, I haven't been counting, but probably seen between 5 and 10 fish caught by each of these bears. And it's been just about an hour, almost an hour and a half. So these guys can catch 30, even 40 salmon in a day, which is just a absolutely incredible amount of calories. A 4,500 in each fish. They won't eat the entire fish generally at this time of year. They'll eat just the fattiest parts, the skin, the brain, and the eggs if it's a female fish. But even still, that's a lot of calories. These bears can put on 1 to 2 pounds each day during the summer, consistently. And over the course of the season, they can gain 200, even 300 pounds. And they'll use that over the winter while they're hibernating, while there's nothing to eat out. And they'll survive off those fat stores. We'll see these bears disappear around November to head off to hibernate, and they will be even fatter than they are now. And the bears are built specifically to do that. You know, their bodies they don't operate quite like ours. They're big animals to begin with, so they eat more than us, but then, they eat all their food within that 6-month period in the summertime, summer and fall. And somehow, they don't get things like diabetes, they don't have heart problems. So learning about these bears, how their bodies operate, how they do these amazing things that they do, that might end up being useful to humans someday. It could help us cure diseases, it could help us do any number of things. It'd be pretty great if we could figure out how to hibernate as well. So it looks like 747 is going to go back into the jacuzzi, one of the more productive fishing spots at the falls. And 32 is going to capitalize on that empty spot up in the back office there, that back bar pool. just slide in where he fits in. So that's gonna about do it for me today. I hope you guys can continue watching on explore.org. If you're on Facebook Live, go check out explore.org. It's an absolutely fantastic website. It's a non-profit organization that we're partnered with. They've got cams up and down the river. They've got cams all over the world, so you can check out other wild animals as well. So I hope you guys can all keep watching and continue to be amazed, inspired by these incredible, powerful animals. And I hope you can all continue to learn from them, as we all do out here watching them in Katmai. Also, before I go, I want to throw a quick shout out to the National Park Service itself. We're in our centennial year. We've turned 100 this year. So 100 years of stewardship of amazing places throughout America. So we're celebrating all year, and we want you to celebrate too. We want you to get out and visit these places, make use of them. Enjoy them, be inspired by them, learn from them. Because they wouldn't be here if we didn't use them, if we didn't celebrate them. We also want to look forward to the next 100 years and make sure that we can continue to be stewards of the national parks and of the planet as a whole, really. And we want to be even better. You know, the last 100 years was great, but it wasn't perfect. So we want to improve, we want to protect more places, we want to protect them better. And even though we're celebrating the Park Service centennial, I think it's important to look forward and, you know, what is the world going to be like in the next 100 years if we don't get better? If we don't put in the effort and energy into protecting places that we love? So there's lots of things you can do. You know, we've all, I think we all know the things that we can do. You know, you consume less, be mindful of the things you buy. You know, we vote with our dollars. When we buy products that aren't ecologically sound, aren't environmentally sound, you know, those industries grow, they thrive. We want to support industries that are ecologically and environmentally sound. We want to support industries and individual companies that are going to help our environment rather than hurt it. Getting back to the parks, you can get out and volunteer in your parks aside from visiting them. But what I hope you go out and do now is I hope you go out and enjoy them. And you can start with the bear cams, enjoying this incredible resource that we have here in Katmai. So I'll say goodnight to you guys. It's evening here, whatever time it is for you. I hope you have a good rest of your day, good rest of your night. And I'll talk to y'all next time.